Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a story that honestly feels straight out of a Hollywood thriller, but it is entirely, agonizingly real. We're going to dive into a gripping forensic mystery about a massive digital treasure, a heavily fortified piece of hardware, and the frantic, desperate search for a single missing piece of paper. It's a story that perfectly captures the unique and sometimes terrifying vulnerabilities of our modern digital age. $200 million. Just imagine that for a second. Picture yourself holding this tiny encrypted iron key hard drive right in the palm of your hand. Inside that device sits hundreds of millions of dollars in Bitcoin that you legally own, acquired completely legitimately years ago. You can literally see the physical device. You know the money is right there, just waiting on the other side of the screen. Now ask yourself, how would you feel if the literal only thing standing between you and that immense, life-changing fortune was a password? A password that you created yourself, but somehow, somewhere over the course of a decade, you completely forgot. It's a chilling thought, isn't it? All right, part 1, the forgotten genesis. Let's rewind the clock a bit to see exactly how this situation came to be. We're going back to a time when Bitcoin was in its absolute infancy, an era when the cryptocurrency was worth practically nothing, and almost nobody believed it had a real future. Years ago, a young technology enthusiast named Stefan Thomas received thousands of Bitcoin as payment for a project. Because he was tech-savvy, he did exactly what you're supposed to do with digital assets. He stored them securely. He put those thousands of coins inside a highly encrypted digital wallet, locked it with a password, and simply went on with his life, probably thinking very little of it. Moving on to part 2, millions behind a screen. So, as the years rolled by, the world completely shifted beneath Stefan's feet. The cryptocurrency scene didn't just grow, it exploded into mainstream news. It's a textbook case of dramatic irony, right? In the past, this asset was essentially worthless, an experimental token ignored by the traditional financial world. But in the present, news headlines are constantly flashing record-high prices, completely transforming those forgotten, ignored digital coins into a fortune worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Stefan suddenly realized he was sitting on an absolute empire. Which brings us to part 3, the impenetrable vault. You can imagine how excited and probably terrified Stefan must have been retrieving that secure device. He sits down, brings up the login screen, types in his password, and hits a digital brick wall. Rejected. Okay, he tries another variation. Rejected again. And then a really terrifying reality begins to set in. See, this isn't like a forgotten email password where you can just hit a recovery link. This specific device, the iron key, allows only a very limited number of password attempts. If you exceed that exact limit, the drive permanently encrypts itself, locking away the contents forever. Let's look at part 4, hunting for paper clues. This incredibly high-tech digital problem immediately sparked a desperate, purely analog investigation in the real world. Stefan essentially became a forensic detective in his own home. He knew he must have written that password down somewhere. The key to hundreds of millions of dollars wasn't going to be hacked. It was hiding on a piece of paper. He tore through physical spaces. We're talking stacks of old notebooks from years prior, filing cabinets packed with documents, old hard drives, deeply buried personal records. He was frantically searching for a single scribbled word or phrase that could unlock his future. Man, the passage of time here is just agonizing to think about. What starts as a frantic weekend search turns into days of absolute sleepless nights. Days bleed into weeks, weeks become months, and shockingly, months stretch into years. Through all of this exhaustive searching, literally turning his entire life upside down, that piece of paper and the password on it remained completely missing. That leads us directly into part 5, the psychological toll. We talk a lot about the money in stories like this, but we have to consider the staggering emotional weight behind that hardware. Stefan was trapped in a grueling cycle. On one side, you have his personal hope, this relentless determination, staying awake night after night, tearing through boxes, absolutely convinced that paper had to be there. But crushing against that hope is the mounting financial pressure. Every single day he wakes up, the Bitcoin price has changed, usually climbing higher, while the number of login attempts he has left dwindles down. It is literally a recipe for mind-bending frustration. And the world outside wasn't making it any easier for him. Global news headlines continually celebrated new, record-breaking cryptocurrency prices. Every single time he turned on the TV or checked the news, he was brutally reminded of that inaccessible asset sitting right there in his room. Its value kept skyrocketing, basically taunting him with a life of unimaginable wealth that he simply couldn't touch. Because remember, he couldn't just guess his way out of this. With each failed login attempt, the threat of a permanent lockout became more and more dangerously real. He was quite literally down to his final chances. The suspense is just unbearable. Do you try one more password and risk losing it all forever? Or do you leave it untouched, just hoping for a miracle memory to surface? Finally, Part 6, an unsolved digital mystery. So here we are in the present day. That massive fortune still sits silently on a desk, trapped inside a tiny piece of plastic and metal. It's like a modern-day treasure chest, where the map isn't buried on some remote island, it's lost somewhere in a man's memory. And it all brings us to a really haunting realization. People lose fortunes all the time, right? Bad investments, lavish spending. But Stefan Thomas's story highlights a terrifyingly simple reality of the digital age. An entire fortune can vanish, not because of a market crash, but just because of human memory. A simple, forgotten password. Which leaves us with this final, truly provocative thought to take away today. We spend our entire lives demanding stronger encryption, better locks, and absolute digital security. But as Stefan's story proves, there is a very fine line there. At what point does our own perfect technology stop protecting us from the outside world and start locking us out of our own lives? Thank you so much for exploring this mystery with me.